right, well, let's go ahead and do this then. All right, let's call this, are you ready, Heather? Okay, let's call this meeting to order August 24th, 2023 at 6:30, Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Board Member Mahoney.
Here.
Board Member Westcott. Here. Board Member Tapie. Board Member Johnston. Board Member Blackhurst.
Yeah, we're running a little shy on people today. All right, approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda.
It's up to you if you want a second or.
Happy to second it. I guess we're short on.
Yeah, it's tag team. You guys take it. Roll call, please.
Board Member Blackhurst.
I'm sorry. I second it and we vote yes.
Can't really hear you all that well.
Oh, sorry. Board Member Westcott.
Yes.
Board Member Mahoney.
Yes, motion carries. All right, next item is the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion or approval of the November 3rd, 2022 minutes?
I move to approve the November 3rd, 2022 minutes.
And I second.
Hey, can we have every board meeting like this? It's pretty easy. Roll call, please.
Board Member Westcott.
Yes.
Board Member Mahoney.
Yes,
Board Member Blackhurst.
Yes.
and motion carries. All right, next item is the Town of Lochbuie Wastewater Treatment Plant Expansion Design Award. Mr. Norman.
Pretty sure this microphone works. So, good evening. I think everybody knows me, but for those that don't, I'm Chris Larman, Public Works Director for the Town of Lochbuie. Tonight, we're here to give an informative presentation on the wastewater treatment plant expansion and kind of where we're at on the process. Our plant's no different than every other plant in Colorado. We have a discharge permit, and with that permit, we have certain triggers for when we have to initiate design and expansion. We hit the triggers for both hydraulic and organic loading in 2021. After that, the town engaged with Aqua Engineering to update the wastewater utility master plan, and that was completed and adopted February 23rd of 2023. With that being complete, we now have the ability to begin the design phase. And in May of this year, we issued an RFP to qualified firms for the preliminary design of the wastewater treatment plant expansion. That RFP closed on June 30th. Town staff and our consultants thoroughly reviewed the proposals, and we selected a few for interviews. Representatives from the city of Brighton were invited, but they weren't able to attend the interview process. And out of those interviews, the town staff and the town board authorized the town administrator to negotiate a professional services agreement with Aqua Engineering to complete the design and preliminary engineering for that update. Some of the key outcomes of this design will be to double our hydraulic capacity and almost triple our organic loading. And it'll also set us up for future regulatory compliance. And Craig with Aqua Engineering is here he has a slideshow presentation where he'll elaborate a little bit more on those things. So with that, I'll turn it over to Craig.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here again. Nice to see you all again. This presentation is very similar to what we gave to the town board meeting, but I'll run through slides quickly, and please feel free to interject with any questions you have along the way. So key team members, Bob Frischetti, he is not here with us tonight. He's actually out of country, but he is the principal in charge for this job. He's a principal and owner of Aqua Engineering. He brings a lot of experience to the project team and will be the lead quality control reviewer for this project. I'm Craig Matsuda. I'll be the project manager. I'll be responsible for managing the scope, schedule, and fee for this job and just making sure that the towns and then all stakeholders, critical success factors are being met. I was also the project manager for the wastewater utility master plan project. So I'm familiar with the facility and bring a lot of good institutional knowledge to I'm also involved in the town's water master plan project as well. So I'm excited to be able to bring those two projects together, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit, but a potential one water strategy for the town and this project. Just a quick slide about Aqua, our resume, and we have many successful wastewater projects completed, several MBR jobs. And so we are well qualified and excited to bring our services to the town here. Scope of work. Our scope follows a typical Colorado wastewater workflow. We'll start with preliminary design, review and establish a new basis of design, pretty much confirming the basis that was created for the wastewater utility update. Then perform the alternatives analysis where we'll select the secondary treatment process that will be designed around for this expansion. After that, we will help the town with the site location application and engineering report. That is a submittal to the state that is required as part of the design approval process. We'll also present to the North Front Range Water Quality Planning Association any necessary updates to the utility plan, and then get into the design phases of the job. We will take design through final design and into the bidding phase services. And there's a couple potential I guess, construction deliveries, one being a CMAR selection with a guaranteed maximum price, or just a traditional design bid build project. At the 60% design phase, we will help the town with the process design submittal to the state for ultimate design approval. And then also our proposal included construction phase services, but we understand that those will be considered at a later date. And then, throughout this whole process, we want this to be collaborative. So our scope includes many workshops, routine meetings with the town, with other stakeholders, a few of these sewer board meetings as well, just to keep stakeholders up to speed on our progress and making sure that the project is progressing, appropriately. Project requirements and goals. So the drivers for this job, our scope of services is developed around expanding the treatment facility and making sure that expansion includes operator-friendly improvements, as well as meeting all future CDPHE discharge requirements. And part of that too, part of those treatment goals are the town's potential one water approach, utilizing reclaimed water within the town and meeting those discharge or those water quality standards. The facility, as part of the wastewater utility master plan project, we performed a comprehensive performance evaluation of the facility. And there is much equipment that is either undersized or aging out. So this project will require replacement of that equipment. And we understand that there's many stakeholders in this project as well. There's the Franco ditch, the 2009 service agreement, and the sewer board that must be involved throughout the whole project. And we intend to keep everybody appraised as we go. Lastly, during the RFP process, there are several project goals or needs, mostly surrounding the smart site planning. So we know that there's a future fiber cable that will be delivered or extended to the site. on-site solids drying and composting, and also potentially some town public works buildings within that wastewater facility. So site planning is critical for this job. Before I go into any treatment goals, are there any questions or comments?
Well, Mr. Mahoney, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I just want to make sure that we bring this to the attention of the sewer board and work with Aqua on this. Under the wastewater services agreement that Brighton and Lochbuie entered into, that's the basis for forming this sewer board. The sewer board gets a opportunity to vote, it says, on all plans and designs prior to any vote, we have to give 30 days, in advance, copies of the plans and designs to all the sewer board members. And I'm just wondering how we can make that work with that 60% completion requirement. In other words, if the sewer board would be amenable to just weighing in at the 60% stage versus at the final design stage, or how the board would like to go about that. Does that make sense?
I guess I can give you my feedback from that standpoint. There's three main design phases: the 30%, 60%, and final design. At each of those are pretty typical milestones where those would be good opportunities to share a set of the plans and specifications with the sewer board. And we could definitely fold in that 30-day kind of review period within our schedule. So that could be maybe those are the main milestones we shoot for.
Okay, yeah, I think that, I look to the sewer board if they want to review it at all those different stages, or where you are. The agreement itself just says all plans and designs prior to scheduling a vote by the sewer board to accept and approve the plans. It's a little bit vague. It doesn't contemplate, frankly, these three different phases of design.
From my standpoint, I'm flexible in terms of when the sewer board wants to meet and review plans.
Mayor Mahoney, I guess I'm turning it over to you because I think that this would be a good meeting for us to all agree.
At 60,
Say again, Maureen.
I'm just saying, I'm turning this question over to you because I think it would be a good idea to decide tonight what that is going to look like moving forward, just so we don't have any, just our future disagreements on that.
Okay, go ahead. Wayne.
at 60% design would be at the time where you would decide whether it'd be a CMAR project or whether you would do a traditional design bid build. Just from my point of view, I think that would be the best time to meet with Brighton. That way they would weigh in on how the project's going to get delivered. Also would have a really good idea of what the plant's going to look like, some preliminary cost estimates, things like that you'd want to take back with you. So to 60% to me, if you wanted to pick just one time, or minimize how many times you meet, that would be a good start.
I actually don't have any problem with it. I think that's a great approach. I don't know if the rest of the board. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a good time to decide which way to proceed. What we're saying is whether we should go with a traditional bid or GMP.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I have a couple of questions when you get to that point. What is the current capacity?
It's a 2 MGD facility currently.
What is it?
2 MGD, 2 million gallons.
So this is doubling the current capacity.
Yes, sir.
Up to 4. And as you've looked at, I'm sure you have, and you've consulted with Brighton, because I didn't even know what those discussions were, about what we project our next 5 or even 10 years growth. How far out into the future do we think doubling capacity will take us?
Yes, for the wastewater utility master plan, we mapped out based on a couple of different factors, but growth per year. And that's at those assumed growth rates. This doubling of capacity would be about 10 to 12 years, depending on actual growth rates.
The last thing, and this is really minor because it's really getting, you said that you're going to be looking to dry the solids on site.
Potentially, yes. We want to evaluate it. It does take, a good footprint and maybe some upfront capital, but we want
Yeah,
to.
my knowledge goes to really old technology, but when Brighton was doing that, we definitely had problems with odor. Has that been something that technologically you've been able to overcome? Because when you dry them on site, they're can create smell.
Yeah, I think Wayne is the best one for this to answer, but
Yes, it's based on, and Ed Burke, who was your superintendent that started that, learned that from us over at Louisville, where I worked at Louisville, because we did it. The idea is don't always try to dry straight sludge right off the press, because that's got a lot of moisture. It heats up a lot, creates that smell. We developed a way to where once we dried the first batch, we would save that and cut it in half, sell one half, keep the other half to dilute out the wet sludge so that it would be drier when you started mixing it. And then we didn't have any more problems. And I could tell you from experience that I stunk up the taste of Louisville in 1993.
My experience is with Ed Burke. And although he said it wouldn't smell, it did.
Yeah, it did.
So I'm glad you've overcome that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're all in agreement with Mr. Ramey's position and opinion. And so that answer your question, Maureen?
Sorry, I don't use the Zoom so much anymore. I think so. It sounds to me like we have a majority of the quorum of the sewer board feeling comfortable that the design review from the sewer board will come back at the 60% phase. And so we'll make sure to get copies of those designs out to all the sewer board members at least 30 days before scheduling the vote on approval of that design. And I just want to make sure we're all aware of that requirement going forward and that we're all comfortable with that interpretation of the wastewater services agreement.
Okay, thank you. And we have all three of us. Right, continue.
All right, thank you. So we'll pick up here on the slides, the treatment goals. This is new from our last presentation. So just wanted to get into a little bit more what our treatment goals are for this project. There's several drivers. At the top there, plan for regulation 31. It is looking forward what the most stringent discharge requirements we would anticipate are going to be. So stringent nitrogen down to almost 2 milligrams per liter. Just for reference, your current permits, actually, I don't think you have the nitrogen limit, but it would be, in the short term, deferring to regulation 85 limits, which is a total inorganic nitrogen limit of about 15 milligrams per liter. Phosphorus, I know you're currently treating 2-phosphorus and you're doing a very good job at it, but per regulation 85, we would be designing towards a 1 milligram per liter effluent limit. Next on the list is the Milton Reservoir and Stream Segment, COSPM SO4. That is the stream segment that comes with its own set of, they're called stream standards or discharge limitations that are applied to this facility. I think the most important is that 10 or that total inorganic limit of 10 milligrams per liter nitrogen. So that would supersede the regulation 85 total inorganic nitrogen limit. We also understand that there's FRICO ditch requirements. We need to evaluate that further in terms of flows and loadings to the ditch. And then lastly, the treatment goal of regulation 84 category 3+ reclaimed water. This is something that we really want to evaluate more in the planning phases of this job to see if it is feasible. But ultimately, what that treatment goal would be is retaining more water within the town, beneficially using the wastewater effluent in other ways, such as irrigation, agriculture, construction water. Instead of discharging it to the stream, potentially reusing it beneficially. This slide, historical discharge data. This is a compilation of, I think, the last 5 years of effluent water qualities. Really, the summary is the town has done a very good job, or the facility has done a very good job on meeting limits. There are a couple maybe outliers or isolated instances where limits were not met in terms of organics or metals. But otherwise, the facility has done a good job at meeting discharge limits. Looking forward, the items in blue and kind of the bubbled comments there are some of the constituents of most concern that we really want to dig into some more. Starting at the top, E. coli. Again, the facility has met those limits, but in terms of Regulation 84, one water approach, reclaimed water quality, E. coli will need to be, the facility will need to remove E. coli better. Ultimately, what that means is higher strength disinfection process. But ultimately, to get to a Regulation 84 reclaimed water quality, your E. coli should be a non-detect in all, I think it's 95% of tests. So disinfection improvements are required to meet the Regulation 84 E. coli treatment goals. Nitrate in the middle of the list there, nitrate as N, that's kind of a gauge of total inorganic nitrogen, which per your stream standards will be a 10 milligram per liter limit. Treatment plant is doing a great job removing nitrate currently. So we would want to maintain that level of treatment and improve upon it. So that ultimate 10 milligram per liter limit isn't ever a concern. And then the last one on there is total phosphorus. Again, the town is doing a good job at meeting that limit. But in terms of future Regulation 85, that will be a 1 milligram per liter limit. So as part of the proposed improvements, adding biological phosphorus removal is already included. It's something that we know is important to the facility to reduce chemical usage, but also to meet the future Regulation 85 limits. Any questions on treatment goals or data?
One point oh four is not a violation.
Where did I? Oh, that is correct
It's not until it gets to 1.49.
for
If
current.
you have, when permit, when you use significant numbers, the
Mhm.
way you get at compliance, it'd have to be at 1.49.
Okay. I say yeah. Our proposed treatment process will leave no doubt. Yes. Okay. All right. So real quick on this one water strategy. Again, the purpose of one water would be to retain water, within the town, within its service area. You're producing high quality wastewater effluent. Why not use it beneficially in other ways? And in doing so, you can offset a lot of potable water demands. So reduce the demands on your water treatment plant ultimately by using this high quality wastewater effluent. So at the next slide is best schematically here. At the top half of the schematic, it shows the town's water system. There's well system that pump to a reverse osmosis water treatment plant, and then it's distributed to users for both potable water. There's irrigation usage in there. There's also construction water that makes a big part of that. So the one water strategy would integrate wastewater effluent to offset some of those demands. On the bottom half here is the wastewater treatment plant. And there are several, I guess, avenues to this one water approach. Regulation 11, DPR, it's the orange line there. It is direct potable reuse. So they'll be delivering wastewater effluent directly to a water treatment plant and then distributing to users. Indirect potable reuse would be taking wastewater effluent to a stream or to a reservoir and then pulling from those new water sources to your water treatment plants. And then the third avenue there is aquifer storage and recovery, ASR. That would be storing treated effluent as groundwater and then pulling it as to your water treatment plant. The color is a little hard to see, but on the bottom right there, there's the purple line, which is reclaimed water storage. That is regulation 84. So that would be a lesser water quality than your potable or your indirect or direct potable uses would be, but that would be storing that water in a large reservoir and distributing it to users.
Again, I'm speaking for being the newest board member, so forgive me here. From Brighton's perspective, my understanding was that the effluents, after being treated through the plant, had to be returned to the BB draw as augmentation for our well pumping. I assume that's the same with Lochbuie. So this water isn't for other uses.
That's a good point. Yes, as part of the planning phase of this job, we need to work with Bishop Brogden and all stakeholders to understand the overall water balance. And part of this too is connected to the town's water master plan project as well. So it's all going to be a big kind of concurrent effort. But yes, we do need to make sure the water balance will allow for reclaimed use for the one water strategy. Other questions? Okay, here is it is the schematic site plan. This was included in the wastewater utility master plan, but it's been updated slightly. In the RFP process and through the last several months, this one water approach is very intriguing. And I didn't mention, but it was just earlier this year that CDPHE, the state, had new regulation for indirect potable reuse, direct potable reuse of wastewater effluent. So this schematic kind of includes a conceptual site plan of what we feel is a good starting point in this project. Real quickly, just starting at the south end or the bottom of the schematic, that is the facility's headworks. The headworks will require expansion, so likely a building extension with new screening equipment. The facility's existing grit system will be maintained. A second grit chamber will be added for more hydraulic and treatment capacity. And then additional influent pumps will be added as well. The secondary treatment basins, kind of in the larger squares there, the gray squares in the middle. As part of the planning phases, we will evaluate the secondary treatment processes and ultimately select which one to proceed with. But as shown in this plan, it is an A2O process. It's essentially an anaerobic, anoxic, and aeration treatment train for both nitrogen removal and phosphorus removal. At the top left of the schematic is a new building. We're calling it the new administration and MBR building. It will house a new lab, potentially locker room, showers, the facility is needed to operate the facility more effectively. Also in that building would be MBR, potentially MBR improvements. So MBR is a membrane bioreactor. It's a ultrafiltration membrane. that would ultimately replace the existing secondary clarifiers. So in the treatment train, it is a clarification step. The benefit of MBR is produces a high quality, consistent, high quality effluent. It is also very dependable in meeting, your reclaimed water uses or your indirect or direct potable reuse water qualities. I think lastly in this, or the last couple things would be to increase the aerobic digesters at the facility so that you have more solid handling flexibility. And then also improving that disinfection system, possibly adding additional UV reactors or replacing those units with higher strength reactors to meet some of those reclaimed water quality requirements. Lastly, at the very top of the schematic, there's a couple brown boxes. Those are potentially, locations for a future public works building or facility. We wanted to show it there as being maybe a good place, but ultimately we want to look at this entire site, make sure we are performing that good site planning that is required of this job. Any questions on the treatment plant or scope of treatment? Okay. Lastly, this is just an aerial that we took, and we added renderings to it to kind of show that concept site plan, what it potentially could be. So on the bottom right there, that would be that future MBR and administration building. Giving you kind of an idea of what that size, magnitude on the site really is. But this is by no means, the selected path forward. We want to evaluate all this and make sure it's, agreeable to all stakeholders. But, we had a little fun with this rendering. Lastly, implementation schedule. So we have an aggressive design schedule, understanding that this facility needs these improvements, and especially the expansion. So a little hard to see here, but ultimately the design phases of this job would extend into third quarter of 2024, and then construction starting, as early as quarter 4 of next year. I will, be updating the schedule throughout the project, and I have one thing to add already, making sure that 30 days of public review period are accounted for before our board meeting. Any questions on schedule? Okay, that's all I had to present tonight.
Any other questions?
I'm sure this has been covered several times, but what is the estimate on the cost estimate just from your engineer's initial?
35 million for the expansion.
Pittance.
We're building one just like it, almost twice the price. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. If there's any other follow-up questions, just please let Chris or Wayne know. And
So I would say at some point in the fairly near future, we would meet back as a board, or after you've had a chance to talk to Brighton to see which path we're going to go down in terms of the contract, whether it's going to be a straight bid or guaranteed maximum.
sir.
You'll have plenty of time to review it, have a workshop and vet it out.
Well, I thought Brighton was paying for it.
Our credit card, I think, has been maxed out.
Yeah. All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. And the next item is the 2022 Town of Lochbuie annual audit. The fun stuff.
Yes, the fun stuff, the exciting things. So tonight we have a Miss Abby Irvine. She is with the company Haney and Company. They prepared the 2022 audit, which she presented to our board last month. And she's here to prepare just the one little segment regarding the sewer fund to this board.
Thanks, Denise. Thanks to the board for having me here tonight. So for those of you that were at the board meeting, this is going to sound familiar. So I'll just go through the highlights specific to the sewer fund as we went through the annual financial statement audit. So just an agenda of what I'm going to talk about tonight. We'll go through the engagement team, just a high level of audit procedures that we go through when we perform financial statement audits, the required communications, which has been delivered to the town, and then any sort of audit adjustments that came about as a result of the audit. The engagement team, Christine McLeod is the audit partner. She unfortunately wasn't able to make it tonight. My name's Abby. I was the audit manager this year. We are new auditors. This is our first year auditing the town. And then of course, we also had a team of folks here working on the audit almost a year ago now. So we get started kind of early to get going on it, and then just wrapped up in July is when we presented. Just a high level of what an audit is from a process standpoint. Starts with the planning process, goes all the way down through reporting. So we've got a copy of the report with you tonight. It's also available. It's been filed with the state of Colorado already. I'm sure it's available on the website. But just going through the process, it starts with planning, and then we have various discussions to just make sure that we can hone in our audit procedures in areas that we feel need a little bit of attention, a little bit more attention. We do use a risk-based approach when it comes to audits. And so that means that we focus our energies a little bit more on the high-risk areas, give that a little bit more time and attention. And then the lower risk areas don't get as much, but certainly every that's subject to auditor judgment, and that helps us develop our audit approach. And then of course, field work, that just means we come out here, we dig into your books and records, ask for invoices, ask lots of questions. And then the final stage is just wrapping up the report, issuing the audit opinion, which is ultimately the end result of the audit. So the audit opinion and overall financial statements were issued July 18th. We did issue a clean or an unmodified opinion on the financial statements this year. And the audit is required to be filed with the state of Colorado. That's been filed. It's due July 31st. You can always request an extension on that, but without an extension, it's due July 31st. So that's all been taken care of. Audits are conducted in accordance with the generally accepted auditing standards. This is just a reminder that an audit, our objective really is to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance over the financial statements. Essentially what that means is that we don't dig into every single transaction. We look at a sample of transactions and we provide opinions over the financial statements as a whole based on the procedures that we perform. Just some highlights regarding the report. So there is a full financial statement report. Of course, the sewer portion is just one component of that. So there's the audit opinion, which is essentially the end result of all the work that we do. I previously talked about that, but we did issue a clean or an unmodified opinion on the financial statements this year. There's the MD&A, which stands for Management Discussion and Analysis. That essentially goes into a kind of high level summary of the year for all of the major funds of the town. Of course, the sewer being one of them, but it discusses all. There are specific statements related to sewer, and those are summarized on pages 16 through 18. Those are in the audit report referred to as the business type funds or the proprietary funds. GAAP or accounting standards have us account for various funds differently. And so these have their own sets of financial statements. And then of course, the accounting policies, these essentially are just a little bit more in-depth discussions regarding various components of the financial statements and how they're accounted for. One of the large areas, especially related to sewer in particular, is going to be the capital asset schedule. So you're just talking about a very large plan to improve the plant. All those assets related to the particular fund are summarized in note 4. There was a restatement this year, so I'll get into that here shortly. Any sort of long-term liabilities related to the fund are going to be summarized in note 5. There's, of course, budget to actual schedules, and that's page 65 in the financial statements. And then there is a restatement summarized on page 16 note 16. It was an accumulated depreciation adjustment, and I'll get into that here shortly. So as far as the required communications, so we provided a letter at the end of the audit summarizing these communications. This was the very first year for a brand new accounting standard. It's called GASB 87, which goes over leasing requirements. So there was no material impact to the town, either in regard to the sewer fund or the town as a whole. But that was a new standard. We just like to point that out. Part of accounting is dealing with accounting estimates. So the significant estimates that we consider in regard particularly to the sewer fund is going to be depreciation. Depreciation is essentially a cost allocation. You buy an asset and then you allocate that cost over time rather than taking it all into expenses in the first year. So it's considered an estimate, and we look at that and make sure that that looks reasonable and consistent. And then there's some pension adjustments that are as part of para. You record your portion of para in the financial statements. And so we assist with those adjustments, and there's certain assumptions that go into those, and we look at those and just make sure that those look reasonable. There were no disagreements as we went through the audit this year. There was really no difficulties as we went through. So just everyone was great to work with. The first year can be, there's a little bit more involved as we're asking questions and getting to know everyone. So I thought that went really, really smooth and got all of our questions answered in a timely manner. So certainly appreciate that. We're not aware of any other consultations regarding accounting, any sort of accounting matters. We did ask for a management representation letter to be signed as part of issuing the final audit. And so that's been signed and delivered. The final audit's been issued and again filed with the state of Colorado. And some other matters that we just want to point out is there's some required supplementary information attached to the audit report. That's in general, we're not issuing an opinion on that. There is no assurance over that, but that's required to be included for GASB. And then there's some other supplementary information we issue and in relation to opinion to that. So we reconcile that to other schedules and just make sure in relation to the other financial statements that it looks reasonable. A lot of those are going to be your budget to actual schedules. And then there was, again, a restatement this year. And then just as a reminder, as part of the audit process, we do not audit internal control. We do look at internal control from a high level, just to make sure that the controls are designed kind of the way that we expect for the size of the organization, but we're not going in and auditing controls. We're not issuing any sort of opinion. If there was any sort of control matters that were brought to our attention that we would, that we thought were significant, we'd discuss them here. Really nothing came to our attention. The restatement, which we'll talk about here in a minute, wasn't considered any sort of control deficiency. This is something that was really kind of known about and discussed in prior audits. It's just not anything that was ever really dealt with. So we talked about the right approach and came up with a determination that we should really make some prior adjustments related to particularly the plant and the accumulated depreciation associated with it. So as part of the audit process, we do provide, if we have adjustments to the financials, we do include those, or we do discuss those. And so there was standard adjustments related to the pensions that I mentioned, as you participate in FPPA and para. And para has an OPEB plan that stands for other post-employment benefits. Those require certain adjustments to the financials every year, and we do assist with those and provided those. And those do get posted. There's a portion of that that gets allocated to the sewer fund. And so that's how that impacts the fund. And then there was historical accumulated depreciation adjustment related to the plan. So essentially it was fairly large, about $2 million. So we were looking at just the balance of that asset and what it was recorded at and what the depreciation was recorded at. And based on management's estimate and kind of what we'd expect the balance to be, it was low. And so we had talked about really how that came to be. And this has kind of been something that's been there for many, many years prior to even staff that are here at the current time. And so there just wasn't some records over the years hadn't been carried forward accurately is our understanding. We did talk to your prior auditor to see if they had any sort of basis or understanding for kind of where those numbers were. And they kind of echoed some of the things that we learned as we were talking with Denise and just kind of where we think, historical depreciation on the plant should be. It's a pretty large asset. That cost gets allocated over time. And so we had to determine really when did that go into service? When was that first built and in service? And what should the balance be as of this year with our fresh set of eyes, and determined that there really should just be an adjustment. And so we caught it up. It was again about a $2 million adjustment to increase accumulated depreciation. So that affects the prior fund balance in prior years. But that's kind of just a little background on what that was. We don't expect any sort of adjustments going forward. This is kind of a one-time catch up. And going forward, it should be kind of on the path that according to the estimate that's been established in terms of the overall life. And so it should just depreciate out according to the schedule that had been established. Before I go on, is there any questions about that? No? Okay. And then just lastly, we like to always talk about upcoming. So GASB pronouncement, those are accounting standards just to be on the watch for. So the one, it's really small slide. You can't see these very well, but the one to watch is it's GASB 96. It goes over subscription-based information technology arrangements. And so as this pertains particularly to the sewer fund, if there's any sort of cloud-based arrangements, software arrangements that are long-term, meaning over a year agreements, then we should be looking at those and considering those for capitalization. So historically and previously, these have just been expenses, you're paying them. But if there's any sort of long-term arrangement there, this is very similar to the new lease standard. These would be considered for capitalization. So essentially you look at that contract, you look at the terms, and then we can help the town with any sort of assessment there. If there's any sort of adjustments, this is going to be in effect this next fiscal year. So 2023. So if there's any major material ones that we need to be looking at, this could potentially affect the financial statements next year. With that, that's all I had to go over today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? I have nothing, staff. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Guess we go right back to.
Okay, so
Can't get away from it.
the next thing on the agenda is the monthly July financials. Per the wastewater agreement, I send a copy of the financials out to each board member on a monthly basis. And in that, I include the financials. I include a copy of the bank statement so you can see and tie it back to the financials. I send to you a detailed accounting of the sewer treatment PIFs that were collected by both the town of Lochbuie and by the city of Brighton. And so I think between those four pieces, you should have every piece of information that you need on a monthly basis to track the treatment PIFs in particular that are being collected by both entities and being deposited into the account. So with that said, the July, everything, it seems to be running pretty close to budget as far as the service charges and all of the revenues seem very much in line. We are, like most entities, glad to see interest rates high. I mean, that's the one time you are glad to see high interest rates. We are actually earning some interest on our deposits right now, which is an awesome thing if you have cash in the bank. So now is a good time for that. So enjoy that while it lasts. Hopefully not for long, because that does have other consequences, such as building a $36 million treatment plant, So one of the things that we did do just in August is we took the money that was at the Chase account, earning very little interest, the treatment PIFs, and we opened up a CD. So on the next financials, you're going to see a sewer treatment CD that has the balance that was there in July of this year put into this CD that is earning close to 5% interest, whereas in the Chase account, it was earning a whopping 0.05% interest. So I elected to keep it with Chase and put it into CD so that it's covered by the PDPA because I want to be very, very cautious and safe with those funds and not and put them anywhere else that is any more risky than it has to be. So you'll see that on the next financials that there will be a CD out there that is where the treatment PIFs are sitting. The account is still there because each month, obviously, the town is still contributing their treatment PIFs and the city of Brighton is contributing their PIFs. So there'll be still a Chase account that says what's happening on the monthly basis, but then there's also the CD. So with that in mind, if there's no questions on the July financials, I'll just go into the 2024 very preliminary proposed budget. Okay. So in front of you, I do have the first draft of the budget, which we'll be putting out there for the October 15th deadline to have your initial budget prepared and published notice to the public. So we'll have an edition sitting out in the lobby for the public to review. The current proposed budget includes the 3% increase in their user fees, which was what is outlined in the wastewater rate study that was done last November and approved last year. There was a 3% increase that was proposed for the next 5 years. And that increase will also be applied to the what we call the Brighton flows. So that amount that comes in there, that will also be increased by 3%. Other than that, the other item I've been working with the City of Brighton staff is trying to get an idea of how many treatment PIFs they'll be contributing to the town next year. And I think we've come up right now of an estimate about 200 single family dwellings. I kind of leave the commercial piece out because that's my cushion for any kind of, if the residential falls down and maybe a commercial comes in, that'll even it out a little bit. So right now, what's included in the budget is about 200 from each entity as far as single family dwellings coming in next year. Again, I mentioned the Brighton flows will be increased by the 3%. And I've started the new process this year of I get the readings from Ramey Environmental. I prepare the spreadsheet and I send it to the staff at the City of Brighton and basically an invoice from which they pay. So that's been working pretty well. I haven't had any questions about it. And so I think that process is working pretty smoothly at this point. Other than that, as far as the expenses go, we did sit down with Ramey Environmental and we went through the capital projects and those things, which are the huge items in any budget. As you can imagine, the plant expansion design is included in the 2024 budget right now. Now, if it advances quicker and we go to construction sooner, that's something we're going to have to look at and before the December final budget. and work with that number if we think we're going to need to add some more in there for more design or more construction happening in 2024. So we'll work closely with Ramey on that one. Other than that, we have built in basically a 5% increase for wage and benefits for the town staff, a portion of which is allocated to the sewer fund. But other than that, the other costs are basically, I'm looking at a trend and a historical basis in order to forecast for the 2024 budget. The items that are coming in a little higher, of course, are your things associated with chemicals, our sludge removal. Those are some of the items that have been running high, and I expect them to continue running a little high next year as well. So those things have been worked into the budget. And again, this is the preliminary one. We'll be coming back to you all before it's finalized in December, after it's fine tuned, and we'll present that to you probably in November at some point. And that's about all I have. So if you have any questions, I can hopefully answer those.
Okay. Questions, comments? Go ahead.
So when we do the final budget, we'll also set the rate for 2024.
Yes, the rates will be set at that point in time. We'll have a resolution to adopt those. And they'll just be the 3%, which was what was based on and recommended in the rate study that was completed last year.
And we think that's going to be in December. Is that what you said?
It should be in November.
November.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Right, and I have no questions, so thank you. Well, anyone have anything they'd like to say before that makes me happy. All right. Wait exactly 30 seconds, so we're right at 7:30? No. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Do you have a second? All in favor? Aye, opposed, and we are adjourned at 7:30. I like it.